Lost Atlantis, has DNA finally proven it was real? Imagine a world long before recorded history, a time when the oceans were quieter, the skies untouched by modern noise, and humanity was still believed to be primitive, struggling just to survive. Now imagine that during this exact period, when we assume humans were using basic tools and living simple lives, there existed a civilization so advanced that even today we would struggle to understand how it functioned. A civilization that wasn't just building structures, but mastering knowledge, energy, and possibly even the very code of life itself. This place had a name, Atlantis. For thousands of years, Atlantis has existed in the strange space between myth and reality, first described by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who many believe created the story as nothing more than a moral lesson about power and arrogance. But what makes this story different from every other myth is the way it was told, because Plato did not describe Atlantis like a fantasy, he described it like a real memory passed down through generations, with specific details about its location, its structure, its society, and its sudden and catastrophic end. According to his writings, Atlantis was a massive island civilization located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a place rich in resources, filled with grand architecture, advanced systems, and a level of organization that suggests intelligence far beyond what we associate with that era. The city itself was said to be built in concentric circles, with water channels and land perfectly engineered in a way that almost feels impossible without modern technology. But what truly stands out is not just how advanced Atlantis was, but how suddenly it disappeared, because Plato claims that in a single day and night of unimaginable disaster, the entire civilization sank beneath the ocean and was lost forever. No survivors, no clear trace, no continuation, just gone. For centuries, scientists and historians dismissed this story as fiction, something symbolic rather than historical, but recent developments have started to challenge that assumption in ways no one expected. Because deep within the field of genetic research, scientists analyzing ancient human DNA have begun to notice patterns that don't fully match any known civilization. These aren't small differences that can be explained by migration or natural variation, these are distinct genetic markers that appear suddenly in the timeline and don't seem to belong to any documented human group. Not Egyptian, not Mesopotamian, not early European, not even any known prehistoric population. It's as if at some point in history, there was another group of humans, one that developed separately, evolved differently, and then somehow vanished without leaving behind the kind of evidence we would expect. And what makes this even more unsettling is that traces of this unknown DNA have been found not just in ancient remains, but in modern humans as well, hidden deep within our genetic code like a forgotten signature from a past we don't fully understand. This raises a question that is as fascinating as it is disturbing: where did this DNA come from, and why does it not match any known civilization in human history? Because if there was indeed another advanced group of humans, one capable of developing knowledge far beyond its time, then it's possible that our understanding of history is incomplete, that something significant has been lost, hidden, or even intentionally erased. And this is where the idea of Atlantis starts to feel less like a myth and more like a missing piece of a much larger puzzle. Because if Atlantis was real, if it truly was an advanced civilization that existed thousands of years ago and then disappeared suddenly, then it could explain the presence of this unknown DNA, it could explain the sudden gaps in our historical timeline, and it could explain why certain ancient structures around the world seem far more advanced than the societies we attribute them to. But this leads to an even darker possibility, because civilizations do not simply vanish without a trace, especially not ones that are highly advanced. Something must have happened, something powerful enough to wipe out an entire civilization so completely that it left behind almost no physical evidence. And if that is true, then the question is no longer whether Atlantis existed, but what exactly happened to it, and more importantly, why does it feel like whatever caused its disappearance may not be entirely part of the distant past? Because the deeper scientists go into human DNA, the more anomalies they find, patterns that shouldn't exist, sequences that don't fit, fragments of information that seem to come from a source we cannot identify. It's almost as if history is trying to tell us something, but the message is incomplete, scattered across time, hidden within our own biology. And maybe, just maybe, Atlantis is not just a lost city at the bottom of the ocean, but a forgotten chapter of human history that we are only now beginning to rediscover. And maybe, just maybe, Atlantis is not just a lost city at the bottom of the ocean, but a forgotten chapter of human history that we are only now beginning to rediscover. If that idea sounds unbelievable, what comes next is even more difficult to ignore, because the deeper researchers go into ancient DNA analysis, the more consistent these anomalies become, forming patterns that no longer look random but intentional, as if they belong to a structured lineage that once existed with purpose. Scientists working with advanced sequencing technologies have found that certain genetic fragments appear suddenly in the human timeline, without any gradual evolution leading up to them, which completely challenges the way we understand natural development. Normally, genetic traits evolve slowly over thousands of years, adapting step by step through environmental pressures, but these sequences appear almost like an insertion, as if they were introduced rather than evolved. This has led some researchers to consider a controversial idea, one that most mainstream institutions avoid discussing publicly, that at some point in the distant past, human genetics may have been influenced or altered in ways we do not yet fully understand. And this is where the mystery begins to overlap with the legend of Atlantis in a way that is impossible to ignore, because according to ancient descriptions, Atlantis was not just advanced in architecture or engineering, it was advanced in knowledge that may have included an understanding of life itself at a level we are only beginning to approach today. Imagine a civilization that understood how to manipulate energy, how to harness natural forces, and possibly even how to influence biological systems, a society where science and nature were not separate fields but deeply connected, where knowledge was not limited by the tools available but expanded by a completely different way of thinking. If such a civilization existed, it would explain why their genetic signature feels so different, why it does not align with any known population, and why it appears almost out of place in the human timeline. But this raises an even more unsettling possibility, because if Atlantis had reached that level of advancement, then its destruction becomes far more complex than a simple natural disaster. A flood, an earthquake, or even a massive volcanic eruption could destroy structures, but it would not erase a civilization so completely that almost no trace of its existence remains. For something like Atlantis to disappear the way it is described, there would have to be another factor involved, something capable not only of destroying the physical city but also disrupting the continuity of its people, scattering or eliminating them in such a way that their history could not be easily reconstructed. Some researchers have begun to explore the idea that what happened to Atlantis may have been a combination of natural and unnatural events, a catastrophic chain reaction that started with environmental instability but was amplified by forces we still do not fully understand. There are geological records that point to sudden and dramatic changes in sea levels thousands of years ago, events that could have submerged large landmasses in a relatively short period of time. At the same time, there are unexplained gaps in archaeological records, periods where human activity seems to decrease or shift abruptly without a clear reason. When these pieces are placed together, they begin to form a picture that is both fascinating and deeply unsettling, because it suggests that something significant happened in our past, something powerful enough to reshape the course of human history, yet subtle enough to leave behind only fragments of evidence. And then there is the question of memory, because even if physical evidence can be destroyed, stories have a way of surviving, passed down through generations, changing slightly with each retelling but never fully disappearing. The story of Atlantis appears in different forms across multiple cultures, not always with the same name, but with strikingly similar themes: a powerful civilization, a sudden fall, and a warning that echoes through time. This kind of consistency is difficult to dismiss as coincidence, especially when combined with the growing body of scientific anomalies that seem to point in the same direction. It is almost as if humanity remembers something it cannot fully explain, like a distant echo of a truth that has been buried beneath layers of time and interpretation. But here is where the mystery becomes even more intense, because if traces of this lost civilization still exist within modern human DNA, then it means Atlantis did not completely vanish, a part of it survived, not in cities or monuments, but within us. That idea changes everything, because it means the story of Atlantis is not just about the past, it is also about the present, about who we are and where we come from. It suggests that the line between myth and reality is far thinner than we like to believe, and that the answers we are searching for may not be hidden in the depths of the ocean, but within our own biology. And yet, despite all of this, there is still resistance, hesitation from the scientific community to fully accept these possibilities, because doing so would require rewriting a significant portion of human history, challenging long-held assumptions, and opening the door to questions that are far more difficult than the answers we currently have. But history has shown us that what is considered impossible today can become accepted truth tomorrow, once enough evidence is gathered and enough minds are willing to look beyond the boundaries of conventional thinking. So the real question is not whether Atlantis existed, but whether we are ready to accept what its existence would mean, because if it was real, if it was as advanced as the descriptions suggest, and if a part of it still lives on within us, then we are not just discovering a lost civilization, we are uncovering a hidden part of ourselves. And that brings us to the most important question of all: if Atlantis truly existed and its knowledge was lost, is it possible that we are slowly rediscovering it, piece by piece, through science, through exploration, and through the very DNA that connects us to our past? Or is there something else, something we have not yet considered? Something that explains not only its rise and fall but also why it was almost completely erased from history in the first place? Because if the disappearance of Atlantis was not just a natural event, if there was intention behind it, then that means there was a reason, and that reason may still be relevant even today. If you've made it this far, then you're already thinking deeper than most people ever will about this mystery. So let me ask you directly, do you believe Atlantis was just a myth, or do you think there is something real hidden behind the story, something that science is only beginning to uncover? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective might be closer to the truth than you think, and if you want to explore more mysteries like this, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves uncovering the unknown, because the deeper we go, the more the truth starts to reveal itself.